Hey folks, welcome to Ask Evelyn Live, where we answer your questions about compost, recycling, garbage, and other trashy topics. I'm your host, Becca Fong. I'm a solid waste professional and a waste nerd, and I work on Seattle's recycling, compost, and garbage programs from logistics to behavior change. And in this week's episode, you can ask me and my co-host, Pat, anything. All right, we're getting Pat logged in here for just a second, but Pat and I are taking a slight departure from our normal format this week, and we're taking a little tip from the subreddit group AMA, which is Ask Me Anything. So, myself and Pat. Hey, Pat.
Hey, Becca, how you doing?
Good. So we are your consummate waste nerds and solid waste professionals, and this is your opportunity to really ask us anything. We're a pretty open book anyway, though, aren't we, Pat?
I love it. We're AMA every day.
Exactly. But this is kind of a chance to have you guys log in, and we got a couple of questions from you guys in the DMs, which is fantastic. But those of you who are watching, go ahead and drop your questions into the chat. You can ask us anything about the solid waste system, how things work.
Yeah.
And looks like we got our first one here. So what are some of the most commonly items accidentally put into the recycling or the compost bins? All right. That's a good one. So Pat, you want to take a first crack?
Well, on the recycle side, it will be things that aren't clean. That's probably the most common thing is things that are too soiled, too dirty to be recycled. It's gotta be empty, clean, and dry. That's what we say on the residential side.
Totally. And then I think another thing is plastic bags, because we don't take plastic bags anymore and we used to. So that's pretty common in both too.
Yeah,
so both recycling and in compost.
Both the recycle and the compost. No plastic.
Absolutely. I think in the compost, what usually happens is people are trying to find something to contain their compost, like their food scraps in, and they'll use a plastic bag, and then they'll just drop the whole thing into the cart.
Right.
I think that the other thing really quickly that are pretty common that go through are things that people like, they're like, it's made out of plastic. Most plastic's recyclable, but that's where you want to really go back to our guides. Same with compost, where they're like, it's a natural product. Like we get questions about, sponges and things like that. And it's like, you got to look at the guidelines.
Yeah. But just because it has a little chasing arrow does not mean it's accepted in our program. The little triangle, Mobius loop, that's not a solid indication as to what goes in the blue cart. So that's a common issue. You're right.
Totally. So we actually have another one coming in here too, which is, can you tell me why things are labeled recyclable but are not? So it's kind of what you were just saying, Pat.
Yeah.
Thinking about those plastic salad containers. So this goes back to our by the numbers.
Yeah, but I mean, rigid plastic containers like the salad containers, they are fully recyclable in Seattle's program. There are some materials made by some manufacturers that are not. And it's going to vary. It's going to be, there could be a recycle symbol added to the word recycle. It could be added to, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something like a toothbrush or some sort of houseware item. I mean, there's a lot of things that companies put the word recyclable on, but it's just because they're just mislabeling it. They're greenwashing it. They're encouraging it. And it's also the case, like, if you had 1 million toothbrushes, you could probably find a plastics vendor who would take them. And if they knew that one source material coming in, they could grind it down and find a market for that. But not in a material recovery facility. In our recycle centers, it has to be one of the items where we put on the guidelines. They're only set up to handle the basic recyclables.
Totally. And I think one really quick thing is, if you go back to our show by the numbers, a lot of things have those little chasing arrows with the number in it. That just says what the plastic resin is. And like you were just saying, Pat, that has nothing to do with how we actually accept things into our recycle system. Right. All right, we're going to keep rolling here, folks. You guys have so many great questions. Okay, so another question we have here is, I have a rigid plastic kids soccer cone that is worn out. Boy, I got some of those too. Is that recyclable? So very similarly. So I think if it's kind of a rigid plastic, right? That's kind of what you're talking about, Pat.
Yeah.
If it's like hard, if it's those like flexible traffic cones, that's got to go in the garbage.
That's right. But that plastic, it's probably an HDPE plastic. I mean, it could be polypropylene, I'm not sure. But the point is that it's okay. It would be a recyclable item because it's rigid plastic if we had like a whole truckload. But in our program, we're really focusing on rigid plastic food and beverage containers, soaps, things like that. We want the jugs, tubs, and containers. It seems like it's so close because it's almost shaped like a container. It's almost, like a Tupperware item, but I think I would advise no on that. I'm not sure that rigid plastic item would be accepted in the program.
Okay. So the next one we got, which is perfect because we've been having a heat wave here, is can I recycle a broken portable air conditioner? So the thing you have to do with the air conditioners, the reason they provide that cool breeze is they have a refrigerant in them. And so those need to be drained and disposed of properly. So you have two options. You can either take it to the transfer station and dispose of it there. There is a fee. It's about $31, but we can put a link to that on the show notes. Or you can do a special item pickup as well, which is also a fee of about $30 because that refrigerant needs to be captured so it doesn't actually end up into the atmosphere. Those of you who may remember when the ozone depletion was a really big deal, still an issue we want to have under control, but we do not want any of that refrigerant out into the atmosphere. So
a special item for sure.
Special item or transfer station.
Right.
All right, we got another one here. Can I put wine bottle corks into the compost? Pat?
So we talked about this before. Wine bottle corks are not all the same. So unless you're absolutely sure it is a truly organic cork thing, then it would not be compostable. There's a lot of poly cork looking products out there. So we generally say no to that. I mean, that is not an item that we want to see in the compost program just because we cannot confirm. So in our guidelines, a wine cork is a no. It's a garbage item.
Yeah, you can take them back to certain grocery stores. I know PCC does a take
That's
back
right.
program.
That's right.
So, you can have a super big collection, which is always like a good litmus test. Like, how many bottles of wine did I actually drink? And then you've got all of your corks and you can take them back to PCC, and they often send them back to the suppliers to actually be repurposed into cork. Oh, here's a good kind of solid waste operations question. So someone dumped some junk on the planting strip outside my house. What can I do about that? Oh man, the best thing you can do is
I would say contact illegal dumping.
Totally. So what I'm going to pull up here on my phone, folks, so you can see it, you want to get the Find It, Fix It app and report it to illegal dumping. That is absolutely the best thing. It looks like that. Find it, fix it, check it out in the app store. You can make a new incident. What's great too is this has the ability to geolocate, so you can be standing next to the junk in your parking strip and typing it in, and that will generate a service request to illegal dumping to have that stuff picked up.
That's great. Yeah. The other option is, you can, if you were taking a load to the transfer station, you could take it yourself. I mean, you can self-haul it if you just want to own it, but you can contact the city and it will be addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Here's a really good process one. So where does our recycling go after we put it in the blue bin? All right.
Wow. Okay. So let's start with paper. So paper there's a variety of paper commodities, and the paper will go to a pulping mill. The cardboard goes to a special cardboard production mill, but the other paper stuff will go to paper pulping facilities. Metals. Aluminum goes to the aluminum smelter process, and that's actually a fast turnaround domestically.
Very fast.
And then steel, ferrous metal, goes locally, as far as I know, goes over to West Seattle's Nucor Steel, right off the old West Seattle Bridge. And that is a facility that makes fresh rebar and angle iron and all kinds of long stock out of there. And then, so the other materials are plastics. Plastics right now, the mixed rigid plastics, we're sending them to a facility in Canada, in British Columbia, where they're sorting it by grade, and it's then brokered as a commodity by different types of plastic. Some of the 1 and 2 plastics, when you get into the specifics of plastics, when the recycle center sorts it through, some of those are brokered directly from the recycle center to other recycling plastic recycling facilities. But the mixed rigid plastics go to the secondary plastic recovery facility for sorting.
Absolutely. So the primary, where they go directly after they leave your house, is that they go to the material recovery facility. So that's where they then get sorted out into all those different streams that you were just talking about.
I skipped a step. Yeah, I went right to where they go.
I know. We could talk about that forever, and we probably will do another show about that. But that's a really great question. All right, another one. Can you provide info on recycling disposable batteries? Yes, we absolutely can. You've got some really good options. So one that I have used recently is our special item pickup. You can put out up to 2 1-gallon Ziploc bags full of batteries of all kinds, and we will pick them up, and it's $5, and we'll pick them up from your house, and then we will process those for recycling. We'll capture the different like minerals, we'll capture the metals in them. It's fantastic. You can also take them. So second option is you can also take them to the transfer station and drop them off for free. Both the North and the South transfer stations have big, huge battery recycling bins. The third option is that you can look up calltorecycle.org and you can look up different stores, retail locations that will take those back. So transfer station and Call to Recycle, you've got to haul them, but they're free, or we will come and get them, which, you know, for me, the convenience is king a lot of times. For $5, like we started that service in 2019 and I've used it twice, and we go through a lot of batteries at my house.
Nice.
So
I've done a couple of drop-offs before. I've done some of the drop-offs. Also the rechargeable batteries, those are actually much more valuable. They have different elements in them. So there's other collection points at hardware stores, at some of the lamp stores or something like that. So there's other places within the community that sell batteries that will take the batteries back. So I like finding those routes where you can kind of, you know, provide your material through that extended producer responsibility sort of model, that pathway back to the manufacturer.
Totally. All right, we got another good one. So what should I do with old electronics? It kind of depends on what fits. Electronics is a big category. So we also have a really good special item pickup. So I had I was looking for props, and it's like I have this old clock radio. You got to love how stuff like gets super weighted now. So these can't go in your recycle carts. What we do is through a special item pickup for $20, you can fill a 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot box,
or thereabouts,
bigger than I can make my hands on this screen, and fill it with these cordless phones, tablets, old laptops, desktop computers. If any of you guys out there still have those, and we will pick those up.
You could put one of your Ziplocs of batteries in there.
Yep.
You could put a Ziploc of an old fluorescent bulb in there. So a bulb, a battery, a couple radios. You know, it's the special item kind of mixed box. So
exactly. So that's $20. Again, that's a convenience thing. So we can come and pick them up from you. And what happens is you can also, so what we do is we work with a program called eCycle Washington, and that's like an electronics recycling certification program. And so, Pat, I want to know if you could talk a little bit about some other places where people could take electronics.
Well, so there is a distinction between the eCycle Washington program and general electronics. eCycle Washington program covers computers, televisions, laptops, things like that. General electronics, really the best option, I think, is a special item collection. I think it's the best one because it's not as easy to find a vendor, consumer-facing vendor, to take your odd electronics, clock radios and stuff like that. So eCycle Washington, you can go to participating collection points like Goodwill, like some of the stores that sell computers and TVs, and you can drop these things off for free. They will take them. Those stores actually get paid per unit for the units that they collect for the system to go back to recycling. So TVs, computers, much easier to find options there because the state passed the law that requires the manufacturers to come in and set up this system that provides a great service to consumers. Other electronics, it's too scattered still. Radios and vacuum cleaners and, you know, mixers and things. All these kinds of electronics, the easiest, most direct route is to use the Seattle Public Utilities special item pickup, in my opinion.
Absolutely. All right, we have a couple that have to do with the yard carts. So I'm going to combine these two. So we've got this question. I've got a bunch of blackberries I need to clear for my property. Can I put them in the yard waste cart?
Blackberries? I thought you said it was.
Okay, you.
Okay, go ahead.
We're pivoting. This is my segue.
Yeah.
So blackberries definitely antiquated. I want to know if they need to go into the black cart. So I'm guessing garbage, or if it's considered, because it's considered a noxious weed.
Yeah.
And there's another one that says, are there any restrictions on plants that go in the yard waste? Flowers, weeds, dying plants, are these all okay? So blackberries and noxious weeds are tough. For those of you who are also plant nerds out there, noxious weeds, I totally appreciate this question to pay attention to what is actually accepted. We're going to take a small, like, left turn nerd alert here.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
noxious weeds go into various classifications.
Right.
You know, class A means that they're really like crazy. They're just starting. They spread really, really easily, and they're mandated for control. So those are usually kind of governed by King County that does kind of noxious weed control.
Sure.
Blackberry is all the way down in the third class because it's everywhere, right? And so it does spread very rapidly. Like I'm sure this person is seeing like, oh my God, they're everywhere. But those can go into your yard waste cart. And the reason is that when they go to the composting facility, the parts, the vegetative parts that spread, the seeds, they get broken down in the composting process. So they're no longer going to spread when that compost goes back out. Yeah. That's really the main worry when you're putting some kind of weed into the compost. But so far, what we've heard from our processors is that they are able to break all of that down in the process. Mm-hmm. There has been a little bit of confusion if you go to Cedar Grove's website. They just list noxious weeds, but again, that is a huge category. And when we've talked, sorry, go ahead, Pat.
I was going to say, they're messaging to the landscapers as well. They don't want to get a truckload of just blackberry bramble bushes. You know, that's an intense look. If it grows in your yard and you're removing some little blackberry vine, you can put it in your yard cart. Doesn't matter what noxious weed it is, you can put it in your yard cart if it grows in your yard. That's my messaging. That's what I think. Yard waste. It's in your yard. It's a plant. It's growing. Rest assured. But if you're a landscape service provider out there and you're really hearing me say that, I'm not talking to you. I'm saying you need to talk to Pacific Topsoils, Cedar Grove, you know, some of these McFarland Bark. I mean, these outfits that are taking the truckloads of material and follow their guidelines. That's a commercial or almost landscape industry kind of question versus yard waste at someone's home.
Totally. So we got a couple more questions in the chat here. We got a couple through DM. It's a little longer show, but this has been so fun. I'm really appreciating you guys writing in with your questions. So I love this one. Another question. I'm asking for a friend. What happens if you recycle something that isn't recyclable?
Well, that creates contamination, and that increases the cost of the operation. And if the facility is working at its peak performance, that item will be removed from the belt and it will be disposed down the chute that goes to the landfill box. So there is a percentage of material that leaves the recycle plant every day that is landfill bound. It should never have been in the recycle bin. Sometimes these items, though, don't get picked off as well as we'd like, and the mechanical systems are only as good as they are. So sometimes an item that is really a landfill item ends up getting mixed into a commodity of paper or plastic, and it goes to the next step. They, of course, then have their screening check, but sometimes it just you know, it's just not good. It's the things that add negative attributes to the process. So we really want folks to only put the recyclables in the cart and hope that the system can clear out any problems that occur. But that's the challenge. That is really part of the challenge of trying to get companies to use recycled content. Well, the recycle stream has to be cleaner. So we all have to do our part.
Totally. I think one other thing to think about is that, you know, when in doubt, find out. Check out our Where Does It Go tool, because that will really help you figure that stuff out. And also, it's okay to throw some things away. If you're like, I don't know about this.
That's a really good point.
It would be, if you find out for sure, look it up on the Where Does It Go tool to see, if you can put it in the recycling. If not, if you're like, like you were saying, you've essentially made incredibly expensive garbage if you go and throw it into your recycle cart, and it has to be sorted along this process. So it's okay to throw some things away. So don't be too afraid of that. All right, we got one more here. It says, how do I schedule a special item pickup if I live in an apartment and I don't have access to my SPU solid waste count? That is such a good question. Yeah. Especially as I think it was 1 or 2 years ago, there are now more people living in multifamily than single family in Seattle. So it's a really good point, because if you live in a multifamily unit, you need to go through the property manager, because it gets billed to the solid waste account. Sure. And so really you got to work with your property manager or your landlord to schedule that. We hear you loud and clear. We want to make the service super available. So we're trying to figure out ways to make it easier for property managers to offer it to their tenants. So that's my best advice now. I know it's not perfect, but we hear you. We want to make sure that you guys can use that.
I think it's a great opportunity to meet your manager and get to know your apartment manager a little better. Maybe talk to your neighbors and collect a few, folks' worth of, collected materials in one effort. So it's one pickup a month or something like that. If the manager knows there's demand from the residents, then they will get in the habit of saying, okay, the first week of each month we're doing this or something like that. So it's all about setting it up and taking those steps to kind of pull those pieces together.
Totally. That was a really good question.
Yeah.
So we're about to wrap it up, but we did get a couple of really great questions in our DMs, and I wanted to talk about those. The one that was in our show promo. So it's like, why can't I compost my dog poop?
Oh, yes.
I get those little mutt mitts that say that they're compostable bags. Like, why can't I do it? So Pat, why not?
Well, the dog pet waste may have pathogens in it, and the compost program is not set up to deal with that. The compost program is not it's not going to steam clean everything going through there. It has to be food waste or landscape waste. It can't be human waste or pet waste or hair or nail clippings or any of these don't try and pull other organic material into this stream. It's not for all organics. There's still a lot allowed in all the food and all the landscape waste that's in that mix, but we can't have any pet waste. We can't have any pet bedding. Can't have any, of those types of things. So it's a non-starter.
Totally. It's also why we don't take even there's now a lot of menstrual products that are, labeled compostable wipes, diapers, flosses, anything that's a personal hygiene product. Same thing is that our facilities are not regulated for pathogen control. No. And so we want to make sure that this is a safe process. It's not a vector for transmission. So that's why all of those things cannot go into the compost. But it's a great question. We get it all the time. It's a little bit of a mixed message when you're using a compostable bag.
Yeah, that's really the push. The manufacturer of those bags and their marketing are saying, hey, it's a compostable bag. Buy my bag. It's the best one. That's great. But, once you put the pet waste in there, it's no longer a compostable item. So garbage.
Totally. So I did actually have one more that came up. Somebody had asked us about small marijuana canisters. So there's tubes, canisters,
so many products,
big cartridges, all of those different things. Mm-hmm. And it kind of brings us back to the two tenets that we always talk about with recyclables, which is it has to be able to be sorted. Right. So it needs to be, all of those things are too small. They're all smaller than 3 inches. Right. They're not a single kind of type of product. Some of them are solely plastic, but that's definitely a problem. And then markets, right? So all of those little things don't pass the sortation test. One thing I did want to point out, though, is that a lot of places will actually, the dispensaries have a recycling program where you can bring them back. So for the person that asked that question out there, go to where you bought your products. It's like an EPR kind of light.
It's an EPR. That's what I was just going to say. If you're, whether it's the marijuana industry or any other industry, that's like a boutique special item kind of stream of consumer goods. If you have product that you're continuing to empty out, you should take it back to the place you're buying it from and say, hey, what do you think about this? I have this, let's start sending it back to where you're filling these up and see if you can get a reuse model going.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, and it's a great thing that a lot of marijuana dispensaries are doing this. It's a really good thing to advocate for any local business that you patronize. It's really a way to kind of close the loop on those things. So, all right. And good then question. I guess so we talked about sortation and markets. So you got to be able to sort it. You got to have a market to be able to process it. And Pat, you kind of talked through that about where everything goes after it goes into your food bin. And then for compost, really it's food waste, yard waste, compostable food packaging, right?
Yes, approved, yes. Mm-hmm.
And so for the compostable food packaging, do you just want to take a minute to talk about that really quickly?
Well, it does have to be approved. So it has to be tested and approved by a compost facility. There are companies that are really good about making product that breaks down very well in a compost system. There's a few out there, though, that are not. And so they're not allowed to use the word compostable or put one of the BPI marks on there or CMA or something like that. So you really have to look at what you have in your hand and make sure it has the word compostable on it. If it says biodegradable, if it just has a green leaf and says earth friendly or something like that, don't go with that. That's going to be a different single-use item. Maybe it's still recyclable. If it's a paperboard box or a cup, it's still fully recyclable if it's empty, clean, and dry. But for compost, really follow the guideline of the word compostable and look for one of those agency-based kind of markers as well.
Right. All right. Oh, I did get one clarification here, which was about recyclable versus non-recyclable items. again, plastic bags, that actually was our first question at the top there,
Yeah.
which was, you know, kind of what happens when non-recyclable items go into the recycling. You want to make sure that, you know, you're looking at our guidelines, things that can be sorted. Plastic bags cannot get sorted very well.
No.
So that's why we don't accept those. And,
Mm-mm.
you know, they kind of get tangled in the machinery. If they do make it through, they end up getting sorted as trash.
And plastic bags are recyclable through a take back program. You can go to the website, plasticfilm.org, and look for an option there.
Absolutely. So, of course, the plug for the Where Does It Go tool, that has thousands of items, and we're constantly making updates to that to try to make it easier for you guys to figure out, like, when in doubt, find out. And then, you know, for a lot of things, like, it's okay if you don't know if it goes in the recycling, the compost, you either didn't find the answer that you wanted on the tool, or you just don't have time for that, which is okay. We're all busy. You know, it's okay to throw some things away. But we've got some really great resources for you. Take advantage. There are so many great services that we offer you. And thank you guys all for tuning in. This was super fun. I think we will definitely do one of these again.
Yeah, keep them coming. Keep the questions coming. We're ready for it.
Absolutely. And, you know, even before we do another AMA show, just keep those coming, because this show is run on your questions. And of course, you can hit us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or you can send us an email at askevelyn@seattle.gov. So we love hearing from you guys. It totally makes our day. So, all right, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. And with that, that's another show. And we'll see you next week, Wednesday at 1:30. And with that, I'm Becca Fong. Remember, life's simpler with less stuff.
And I'm Pat Kaufman. Remember to recycle right. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.